G'day divers and welcome back to the channel. Today I'm going to be talking about taking underwater photos with your GoPro. So stick around and I'll explain the settings and some of the hardware I use to get images like these. So the main thing with settings is if you're going to put your camera on a selfie stick and just go for a snorkel, or whether you're going to go for a dive with a wide angled lens and lights on it and filters and all the added accessories you can add, is there really is one set of basic settings that you need. You know, nothing's black and white. There are times where I change it, but I'm going to go through the main one that I use 90% of the time. The reason being is the GoPro has an upside and a downside. The fact that you can't change settings really on it makes it easier to use, because once you set it up and you hop in the water, apart from, you know, maybe moving between presets, is you really can't change the settings. And because of that, there's less to mess up. You don't need to focus it. You don't need to worry about shutter speeds. You don't have to worry about ISO. You don't have to worry about any of that. It's going to auto white balance, it's going to auto expose, and it's always going to be in focus. If you're using a normal camera, all those things you're going to have to think about. You do not need to think about them with the GoPro. Of course, the downside is we're going to have to really pick what those are going to be and go with it. And we have a very small sensor with a very small lens, and it's not very good in low light. And unfortunately, we're going underwater where there's going to be less and less and less light. So what we want to do in the settings is really get around two major hassles that the GoPro has straight out of the box, or any cheap camera in reality, is that really grainy image when the light gets low and blurred images. Because the biggest problem most people have is you go out, you take a bunch of shots and you come back and they're all blurred. And really the reason that's happening is your light's dropping down and the GoPro is dropping the shutter speed so slow that you can't hold it steady enough, or the objects around you are moving too quickly and you're getting a blurred shot. The grain is coming from the ISO because it's trying to pump up the ISO to get as much light in to try and stop from having to drop that shutter speed. So you're getting a grainy shot and you're getting a blurred shot. So the settings really are to stop those two issues. And if you can't get a shot that's bright enough with these settings, then that shot is not possible to get. You need to add light. So what I want to do is I want to make my camera have basically the worst settings, I suppose, that I'm willing for it to go to get a shot. If I can't get that shot at that point, if it's too dark, then I need to add light. There's no way around it. If I try and drop the shutter speed anymore, or put the ISO up any higher, I'm just going to get a blurred and grainy shot. It's no point anyway. So in your settings, I'm going to go through it on the phone so I can record the images or record the video of the steps that I'm using. It's actually easier to do the setup on the phone, especially for photo. Video, it's a little bit limiting, I find, but on photo, there's far less steps, so you can do it on your phone. So let's go through the basic 2 to 3 different presets that I'd have in my camera, and I'll explain why I have those presets as we go along. Alright, once you're in the GoPro app and you're connected to your GoPro, the first thing you want to do is hit the camera button. So we go into camera mode and you'll see at the bottom of the screen that it says Photo RAW Wide. Now that setting is the first setting that I'll use. This is just my standard photo. If I click on that preset, you'll see it's just called photo and it's raw and wide. If I press the edit button, and we'll go through it and I'll explain why. Now this photo setting is the setting I'd use for my above water shots and for my up shallow shots. So if I'm snorkeling or I'm on the boat, you'll find that the next preset I make will be too bright. So this is the setting that I'll use until the setting after it I make for underwater diving becomes dark enough, basically. So first of all, the digital lens you want wide, because like I said, that is what the GoPro is designed for. That is using the full sensor without any manipulation. You're getting the best image out of your GoPro. It also means that your output can be in RAW. I wouldn't bother using Super Photo or HDR. You're going to get a standard JPEG anyway when you select RAW. And normally what I'll do is I'll go through my photos. I'm not a massive person who likes editing in Lightroom all the time, especially when I'm using a GoPro. If I'm using a high-end DSLR, that's a totally different thing. But when I'm using an action camera, I want to use it as an action camera. I don't want to be messing around trying to manipulate photos in Lightroom when I've already got a pretty low quality image that is for social media and things like that. Can you get some great shots? Yes, occasionally you can get some really nice shots, and if you want to spend a lot of time in Lightroom really working on it so you can get that really nice shot, that's fine. But if you're after that, I'm going on holidays and I want to take a load of photos, you don't want to be spending 3 days in Lightroom when in reality, you know, unless you're really good at Lightroom, you'll probably find that the JPEG is better than what you're going to create trying to manipulate it. But by having RAW and JPEG, it gives you that option. I like to have both. I find Super Photo, you can play around with it, but it is designed to be used above water. It can sometimes work well underwater, but it can work very badly. It can go very wrong, create all sorts of weird things when the AI doesn't work out where it is. By taking a RAW and a JPEG file, you now have the option. You have that RAW image that hasn't been manipulated or fully manipulated. It's still a GoPro file, but you have the JPEG. So you look at the JPEG, and if it's worked, I just take it and move on, or you can do a little bit of color correction and, you know, adjusting the sharpness and noise on it. Or if it's a shot you really, really want to nail, or it just didn't work in the JPEG, you have that raw GoPro file to be able to do that extra manipulation. Now, if you don't know how to use Lightroom, that is a whole topic in itself. So, you know, as far as using an action camera, what I want to see is that we try and get our JPEGs as close to being right as they are. All the photos I'll show you during this video were straight out of the camera. I'm not going to show you heavily post-production photos because that's not what I'm after. I'm after showing you that you can take an action camera, take it underwater, and bang, get some shots. So we've got RAW. It'll take a RAW and a JPEG picture. Interval we don't need to worry about. Scheduled capture we don't need to worry about. The timer I would leave off at on this setting. The timer is your 3 second, your 5 second, your 10 second. So at the moment, if we press the shutter button, we'll get a photograph. EV compensation, I always like to put them all on -0.5 because it just helps stop you from blowing out the highlights. White balance, leave it on auto. And then ISO, leave minimum 100 and put your ISO maximum down to 800. It is up to you, but I find that anything, I don't even actually like 800. I use it for photos and hope that I get enough light in there that it doesn't go to ISO 800. But ISO 1600 and above, to me, is when it's pixelated and it is unusable. 800 with a raw image, you could use a denoise in Lightroom and can pull it back all right. Otherwise, really, I'm hoping that I'm going to get 100 to 400. And depending on where it is, this one it should definitely be because I'm using it for snorkeling. But I really do not want an ISO above 800. Those photographs and videos, to me, are unwatchable, unusable. There's just way too much grain. Now, with the denoise, I would leave it on high if you're just going to be using the JPEGs. Let it do the denoise and be done with it. We use it as an action camera. Keep it as an action camera. If you know more about it and you're going to be playing with raw images, then that's a bit different. Color, leave as natural, because if you put it on anything else, it's either going to be too flat and you're going to have to go and deal with it, edit it, or it's going to be far too oversaturated. Now I leave this as my main taking photos when snorkeling, because the thing is, on the next step, we're going to try and take it to be the brightest it can be without it being grainy or getting blurry shots. So what we're going to do is we're going to click on the bottom and we're going to create a preset. So we want a photograph. Next, icon, put it whatever you want. Let's put the thumbs up. How's that sound? Custom name, we'll call it Dive. You can call it whatever you would like. It's a nice thing about the 13. And now let's edit it. So the digital lens, like I said, we want wide. Now if you really want to use a macromate or a macro lens, then you can use linear, but once you use linear, you will be stuck to JPEGs, and it's a cropped lens, or cropped sensor, so you're going to have less light and things like that. I wouldn't bother at all if you're just doing shots with a snorkeling or whatever, but if you do have the macromate and you're doing a macro shot, you can get macro shots with the linear lens. I personally don't bother. If I'm going to take macro photography, I will take my phone and I'll use macro video with the action cameras. Now output, again, we're going to go back to RAW, so we get a RAW and a JPEG image. Interval leave off, schedule capture off, timer. Here is one that I like to do. So I will put the one for underwater on 3 seconds. Now the reason being is you've got this tiny little camera with a tiny little sensor. And if you want to press the shutter button and get the photo to take at that point, trying to keep this camera dead still as you press is nearly impossible. So what I like to do is put it on a 3-second delay. Now that does cause you a bit of a timing headache if you're trying to get a fish swimming past. But what it does do is I press the button, I then have 3 seconds to concentrate on getting as steady as I possibly can. Getting my hands steady, getting my breathing under control, and making sure that this camera is dead still when that timer goes off. Because the one thing that's going to blur your shot is movement, any movement whatsoever. So by getting rid of that pressing of the finger, that movement when you hit the shutter button, and giving yourself that 3 seconds to go, okay, I'm now going to take the shot, is you can get a much, much more stable platform in your body, in your hands, and get a lot less blur in your shots. So that's one of the big tips. You can also do that for the above water if you're having trouble, but for the underwater, it's just a must. Next thing is EV compensation down to -0.5, and before that we've got our shutter. So what we want to do now is, unfortunately, the slower shutter we can choose from when we're out of auto is 1/125th of a second. Now I will select that. The reason being is, I can hold a camera at about 1/60th if I have a choice, but I don't have that choice. So at 1/125th, you should definitely be able to hold your camera steady enough that you get a nice crisp photo. If you're struggling, you're going to need to go up to 1/250th, but every time you increase the speed of your shutter, the less light you're going to get. So the reason we're picking 1/125 is it is the slowest shutter speed we can pick, where you should still be getting sharp images. Therefore, we're getting the most light without it blurring. If you leave it on auto, GoPro will drop it below that 1/125th, and then things will start to blur because they're moving too quickly and you're moving too quickly. So that's the way we get rid of blurry shots, by the timer by 3 seconds and by putting the shutter on 1/125th. Now the reason we keep that other one photo for above water is if you take a photo now with this shutter speed, you're going to find it's way too bright. And you may find when you're snorkeling, it's way too bright. But once you go down a couple of meters, you will find that is no longer too bright. If you're in really, really bright conditions and you're finding this is too bright, then just go in, change it to 1/250th, or have a couple of presets. You can have a preset of 1/125 and 1/500th. You can have as many presets, well, within reason, as you want. So you can have a couple of presets and change between them and see which one gets the exposure right. The main thing is that once you start getting under that depth and the light's dropping, that it's not dropping your shutter speed to a speed where it's impossible not to keep a nice sharp image. Keep your white balance on auto. It's an action camera. You've got no way of changing your white balance underwater within reason, unless you're going to go down there with GoPro labs and cards, and it's just a mess. And that's still only temperature, not tint, so it really isn't adjusting your white balance. So leave it on auto. It's an action camera. If you want to be able to deal with full manual white balance control, then get into a mobile phone or a compact like a TG7. ISO minimum, leave it on 100. ISO maximum, the same deal. I'm going to put it on 800 for exactly the same reasons I talked about earlier. It is the maximum grain I'm willing to accept. If I know that I'm not going to need it, I will actually drop that to 400 because I'd rather miss out on a shot than cause all my shots to be grainy, if that makes sense. If I force it down to 400 or even 200, I know then that every shot I get is going to be nice and sharp and not have that grain. And if I try and take the picture and it's just too dark, then I know I need to add lights. And color, again, natural, leave the denoise the same. Now the only other preset I would make is if I was using the Macro 8 Mini, so to try and get some macro shots is exactly the same thing, but use a linear lens so you have that closer lens, and of course then you've only got the option of a JPEG. So the settings are really quite simple, and what they're doing is I'm saying is 1/125th of a second, and an ISO of 800 is the slowest shutter speed and the highest ISO that I'm willing to accept in a photograph. If I go to that shutter speed, I should still be able to hold it steady enough to get a sharp image. And if the ISO goes to 800, it's not that grainy that I want to delete the photo. If you leave those two things on auto is where you get the blurred shots and the grainy image, because it'll go above ISO 800 and it'll go below a shutter speed of 125ths of a second, and you won't be able to hold it still enough and you'll have too much grain. Like I said, that 3-second shutter timer is really, really helpful. Certainly if your buoyancy control isn't brilliant, because you will still find at 1/125th of a second that if you can't stay dead still, you will get blur. So by having that 3-second delay, so you can press the button, say, right, the photo's about to take, I want to be nice and steady, I just want to concentrate on where I am, then it really, really decreases blurred shots. If you can't do that, or you prefer to press it, then try and increase the shutter speed to a point where you can find that you don't get a blurred shot, but it's not too dark. Now the next step really is keeping it steady. Now you've got 3 options really. You start with a GoPro selfie pole. Now I would always use this over trying to hold the little camera. It is too small to try and hold this in your hand most of the time. You risk dropping it. It's much easier to add a selfie stick. Gives you something to put on. You can have a lanyard, put it around your arm, and it'll get you much more stable shots in the water. It is a tiny camera. You move tiny amount, it's a huge amount for that lens. I still would recommend that at minimum you get yourself a single-handled tray. They're not very expensive. Now you've got your advantage of being able to hold it nice and steady in your hand, and you'll be able to add a single light later on or immediately, because the one thing you have problem with is light. Now it's not the GoPro, it's not the GoPro's fault. I can take a $50,000 camera to 40 meters and the only thing it's going to get is low quality blue shots. They'll be better blue shots than your GoPro. It'll be brighter, it has a bigger sensor, it's better in low light, but it doesn't beat physics. There's only blue light left and that's all it's going to get. Then if you want to go up a step, then go to your dual handle tray. The nice thing about a dual handle tray, and certainly if I'm diving, I would just recommend going straight to the dual handle tray, is you can get 2 hands on it, nice and easy to hold on to. You can clip it off to your BCD with different lanyards and things like that so you don't drop it. And it's the way to get it the steadiest, and it gives you the ability to attach 2 lights. Next steps, I suppose, is talking about the housing. If you're just snorkeling, then obviously you don't need a housing for your GoPro. It's waterproof to 10 meters. I do find that under about 5 meters, the buttons won't work anymore. So to really say it's waterproof to 10 meters is a bit of a stretch. I've never managed to get a GoPro. I've never had one flood, don't get me wrong, but I have never ever been able to get it to record or stop recording, depending on which state it's in, under about 5 or 6 meters. Certainly at 10 meters, the buttons are all pushed in and it's doing nothing. So I wouldn't overly recommend using it outside of a housing. And certainly if you are going to be doing snorkeling and diving and you're going to be putting it in a housing, do not use it in the water on your holiday outside of the housing, because you'll have all sorts of problems with fogging up once you put it in the housing, because it doesn't matter how dry you think this is, it won't be. You put it in the housing and that little bit of moisture will fog up your housing. I will be doing a video on how to avoid that. So if you do have a housing, I would recommend using the housing unless you've got some reason you want to record audio. It helps protect your camera and it stops the moisture getting on it, and it also enables you to use it under 5 or 6 meters. It also gives you the ability to attach accessories a lot easier. So one accessory I would definitely add pretty soon is a red filter. Like I said, if you're just snorkeling, maybe in that top 2 to 3 meters, then your GoPro is going to be fine. It's going to be able to get plenty of light because there's still red, there's still color, and you know, with a little bit of a tweak, you'll get perfectly fine shots. But once you start getting under that depth, red will be gone by 5 meters and could be gone before that, depending on the clarity of your water. So by adding a flip system like Backscatter makes, you can then add different red filters. So you can add the red filter, you can add the Macromate Mini, you can add 2 different red filters on this one. If you would just want to save money, just go on eBay and buy a generic red filter that goes on the front. If you want to get a little bit fancier to be able to attach wide-angled lenses and macro lenses and different red filters, then you can go to backscatter.com and get their flip system, and then you can flip from red, no red. It's quite nice. Instead of trying to pull things off and keep them somewhere, you can have 2 different lenses. Now, the red filter is really good from about 3, or it depends on the visibility. There's no black and white in diving because, you know, are we talking about diving in perfectly clear water in the middle of the day? Or are we talking about diving in cold water? I've been at 3 or 4 meters and it's nearly pitch black and I can't see my hand. I've been in tropical water where you're at 50 meters and you would think you're at 5. So it really depends on the visibility and depends on the light. But as a general rule, at about 3 meters, you'd start using the red filter and it'll be good down to about 10, 12 meters. I personally will use lights myself from about 5 or 6 meters, and I may use lights and a red filter. It depends. Now the red filter is good because it will add color. It has a downside though, and I'll show you a couple images on the screen in video mode, just what this basic red filter does to your shutter speeds and ISO. Because you're going to shove that in front of your lens, it's going to drop the light, which is one reason why red filters aren't a great solution for action cameras. They are particularly useful on high-end cameras that have much better ability in low light, but on a GoPro you have a few issues. Again, I'd use it in clear water in that 3 meters to maybe 10 meter mark. After that, you're going to have all sorts of troubles having enough light getting to your sensor when you're also blocking it as well. Then to step up, probably a really cheap and easy thing, and I've got a lot of photos, it's quick and easy for a holiday, is a single-handled tray with one single light. Now this light here is made by Leeton Power. I'll put a link in the description. Very economical light, heaps and heaps of light. You really don't need 2 when you start out. One of these lights will, you know, this is 10,000 lumens. It will light up anything you like, even in clear water in the tropics. From a few meters down, it's going to light it up. And light makes all the difference. So if you're going to go on your holidays, I would be recommending every day of the week that even skip the red filter and go straight to a single-handled tray with a single light. That will make your biggest difference. If you can light it up with light, you've got all your color back, you've got all the light back, and you have none of the low light issues and none of the color issues. It it solves all your problems. And regardless of whether, like I said, whether you've got a high-end camera or whether you've got a GoPro, everything's about light and color, and a light is going to fix it. You know, 10 years ago, it was a very, very expensive thing to do. These days, absolutely amazing the prices that you can get these lights for. Considerably cheaper than your GoPro, and this will make all the difference to your photos. More difference than the settings. The settings are fine for snorkeling. I would still use those settings absolutely underwater, but this makes the biggest difference. So the settings will help you out, but you really need to think about your lighting and your color after that. So you can't beat physics, and you need light. So if you're going to be using no filter and no lights, you're going to need to film in the middle of the day and stay shallow and keep the light behind you. It's exactly the same as shooting above water. If you go and try and take a picture of somebody standing in front of the sun, all you're going to get is a shadow. Same underwater, you want to be in a position that the light is shining on the reef or shining on the subject, so you can get the most color possible and get as close to the subject as possible. The further you are away from it, even when the light gets to it, it has to get to the subject and come back to your lens, and the blurrier it's going to be. So you need to be nice and close, you need to be nice and shallow, it needs to be in the middle of the day so you have the most sunlight in the clearest water with it behind you. If you then move up to a red filter, still the same principle, because you still need that light. Really, the red filter is just giving you that opportunity to pull some back of the red into it. So again, try and take your shots up as shallow as you can with the sun behind you in the middle of the day. If you then progress onto lights, this is where things change a little bit, because now you have light with you. You are taking light with you. So now your biggest enemy actually is the sun in the middle of the day and the clear water. What you want to be doing is taking your shots in the deepest water, in the darkest spot, later or earlier in the morning. The reason being is the weaker or cheaper your light is, the less light it's going to produce. And if you go in shallow water in the middle of the day, you're going to have a lot of natural light. It's just blue light. So say I'm trying to film in the middle of the day at 6 meters, I need really good lights. I mean, if you have a couple of these 10,000 Leton powers, they will overpower it. But, you know, the cheaper your lights, if you're using a small light, then do the opposite. Do your dives early, do your dives late in the evening. Twilight's a beautiful time to do video and photography full stop. You get those deep blue backgrounds. And then you only need smaller and less light to light your subject. Then by needing less light, you've got less issues with backscatter, you've got less issues with batteries going flat, you know, and you're going to get a much better shot. That's why taking photos and video on a night dive is actually the easiest of all, because now you've got no blue light, and even the smallest little light will light up your subject and you'll get a beautiful shot. So start with no filters at all, nice and shallow. Red filters get you a little bit deeper, and if I was you and you're serious at all about taking photos below 3 meters to 5 meters, then get yourself a light and start practicing in the evenings and the early mornings or on night dives. Or if it is the middle of the day, then try and get to those spots where, you know, you're into that little bit of a cave or canyony area, the overhang where the shadow is, where your light really is going to work well and not be overpowered by the blue light. I hope all that information helped and it made sense. I'm just ad-libbing it, and it's a topic that I could probably spend all day talking about. A lot of people want black and white answers, and there's a lot of grey, and it depends. You know, the ocean's a very unique place. It changes all day, every day. Depends on where the sun is, depends on what the visibility is, depends on what the water is. Are you getting blue light? Are you getting green light? All those sorts of things. So start off slowly, and hopefully you'll start getting some decent images out of your GoPro. Until next time, keep blowing bubbles, and don't forget, the deeper you go, the further you get away from all those idiots.